So, as you know, just a couple of days ago, we've now passed legislation in Parliament to kickstart properly joining the Pacific Partnership, or to give it its full name, the Comprehensive Trade Pacific Partnership, or the CPTPP. Um, like I say, I just call it the Pacific Partnership. It's just easier to call it that than the acronym, or call it the full thing, which, to be honest, is pretty a mouthful. So, that's just the Pacific Partnership, really, in a nutshell. It's a long name with zero benefits. We've talked about the real reason why we're joining the Pacific Partnership. This was because Japan wanted us in there so that we could say no to China should they seek to apply, because a couple of the other Pacific Partnership members actually have a lot of close trade with China, and if they were to join something like the CPP with them, well, it'd be actually quite beneficial. But of course, Japan wants to go, hey, we don't want that to happen. So the UK was brought in basically to say no. And we already said this is going to bring us absolutely 0% benefit from Brexit. But this was one of the big things hailed from it. We've already talked about when the single market is like this for sort of, regulations. Everyone says this is the minimum standard. You cannot go lower than this. You can go higher, but you can't go lower. So that was essentially summing up the single market. Meanwhile, the Pacific Partnership is like that. We might be up here for regulations on certain items, products, and manufacturing things, while another country might be down here. And guess what? If they're down here and we're up here, we have to take their lower regulation products, meaning that you are going to see British manufacturing really suffer because they cannot compete against all these cheap products that are going to come flooding in. And that is going to mean job losses. It is going to mean jobs leaving the UK. This is exactly one of the big reasons why a lot of people voted for Brexit, ironically. Yes, oh yes, we want the UK government to pay and focus on the UK, to invest in the UK. We don't want, globalism. We don't want any more globalism. All Brexit's given you is more globalism. And bear in mind, I don't think globalism necessarily is a bad thing if you can do it properly, if you can strike the right deals. But of course, you've got to remember, we're dealing with an absolutely incompetent government. And of course, you've got Kimmy Badenoch, who, quite frankly, well, is in way, way over her head in this regard. So we find out today that the Office of Budget Responsibility has now published a report into our joining of the Pacific Partnership. And guess what? The government has vastly, vastly oversold our joining of the Pacific Partnership. Are we surprised? Are we shocked? No, because this is what every single expert had been saying since the beginning. So, before we go more into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There's of course the oh, pardon me. There's of course the Pony Club as well down below, and of course the YouTube thank you button as well. So let's go more into this that was brought up in today's Guardian. They're reporting on this. The title of the UK's flagship post-Brexit trade deal is worth even less than previously thought, OBR says. The UK's flagship Trans-Pacific trade deal was presented as a cornerstone of the post-Brexit global Britain. Yet another, fantastic Brexit promise that we're going to become global Britain. Yeah, absolutely fallen on its face. You do not leave your biggest trading partners and raise trade barriers for zero benefit to go join a trade bloc that's halfway around the world and do stupid deals with Australia and Japan just because. I mean, Like I say, you are going to see the farmers' number one priority over the next couple of years is that Australian trade deal because they have been well and truly thrown under the bus by Badnoch, by Boris, and by Liz Truss. And they know it. So it will now deliver even less of benefits to the economy than the tiny uplift that was previously predicted, according to the Office of Budget Responsibility. In a report accompanying last week's autumn statement, of course, like I say, cleverly hidden in the autumn statement, the OBR said that the UK's entry into the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership would just add 0.04%, 0.04% to the GDP in the quote long run, which it defines as a 15 years of membership. So after 15 years of membership, we would get 0.04%. Meanwhile, because we've left the EU, our economy is going to be 4% smaller. And bear in mind, these sound to you and I, and we've talked about this before about sometimes the problem, with these numbers when they are sort of, really small like this. You are talking in the billions of pounds, sometimes in the trillions. So that 4% that we have lost does not even come anywhere near close being covered by that 0.04%. Not even if you add in the Australian and free trade deal agreements as well. Not one of these free trade agreements has added anything and has brought any benefits or tried to, make up for the fact that we have left the EU and the single market. And like I say, next Parliament, we're probably going to actually have proper adult grown-up conversations about the EU and about the single market because there are not going to be too many Tories screaming and kicking kicking up a fuss about Brexit. Because ultimately, what I think is you'll get a lot of people saying, well, actually, now we're in charge, let's fix this Brexit deal. That's what Keir Starmer said. And of course, as we said before, look at how it all goes along. So, back to it. The OBR has also said that the two separate bilateral deals between the UK and Australia and New Zealand, also hailed as a landmark trade agreements post-Brexit, quote, might increase the levels of the GDP by a combined 1% by 2035. Wow. What confidence they have. Might increase GDP by a combined 0.1% by 2035. Wow. What a fantastic trade deal. This tiny prediction of benefits from these trade deals is in contrast with the OBR's own calculation, of course, that the economy will be 4% smaller than if we had stayed in the EU. Previous estimates by the government of these benefits of entry into the Pacific Partnership have suggested a positive economic outcome of difference between 0.8% and 1% of GDP. And of course, they lied. We knew this. We covered this. Badnoch used a different funding formula to try and get that 0.8%. Sorry, that 0.08%, sorry. I'm missing a naught off it because that's how small a percentage this increase would be. But of course, remember, this represents billions of lost income to the UK. Trade expert David Haig said that while the UK's entry into the Pacific Partnership had been presented as a, quote, big moment, it has effectively been hugely overhyped. Some companies will benefit, but the effects will be very small. Haig said that he added and believed that the UK would increasingly have to focus on measures to boost trade with the EU, which have suffered post-Brexit as a result of leaving the single market and customs union. David Cameron also made his maiden speech in the House of Lords to debate the UK's forthcoming accession to it, describing it as, quote, the next vital step in a policy that would put the UK at the heart of a group of some of the world's most dynamic economies. And of course, once again, we get the usual free market fundamentalism from David Cameron, no less. That, oh, somehow, if we're part of these fantastic trade groups, it's going to be wonderful. You know, their line goes up like this. But here's the thing, as we've said before, these are developing economies. They are developing their economies. The reason why they are growing is because of that. They are developing their economies. Eventually, that line will start to plateau. And then what? Are these Brexiteers and these free market fundamentalists now going to say, oh, now we've got to leave the Pacific Partnership because now we're going to join this new thing because, you know, the Pacific Partnership, well, that's clearly dying. It's dying a death. We've got to leave it. Lord Collins, also the shadow deputy leader, said the ascension to the Pacific Partnership, while welcome, would of course in no way compensate for the government's failure so far to do or deliver a trade deal with India or the US, both of which were promised by the Conservative government. Well, I'll tell you now, the Indian trade deal ain't happening. Indian trade deal is not happening, full stop. And the US trade deal, it's not even a thing. It's not even a thing. The Americans just are not bothered. The Americans went ahead and did a deal with the EU over us. Charles Grant, the director of the Centre for European Reform, said that there was almost no prospect for a trade deal with the US, saying there is no chance of one at the moment because Joe Biden does not like trade deals. And there is no chance of one if Trump were to return to the White House because he likes them even less than Biden. In any case, a trade deal will become technically impossible under a Labour government which has committed to recognizing EU standards on plant and animal health. And this will make it also impossible for the UK to accept US products that do not comply with EU standards, which, as we've said before, when Labour do get in, that will be a good step forward. That will be a big step to reconciling our trade relationship with the EU. So, slowly but surely, we're getting there. Slowly but surely, as we always said, when the numbers start to come out and show the realities of what you've done, then everyone's going to go, well, now we've got to rejoin the EU, or at least rejoin the single market or even the customs union. And a lot of people are saying that potentially there may be even talk, maybe in the next parliament, of rejoining that customs union. And if you rejoin that customs union, can't be in the Pacific Partnership. But at least the Pacific Partnership, all you have to do is, yeah, we're leaving. Bye. It takes 6 months to do that. That's it. Leaving the Pacific Partnership is going to be relatively easy compared to what leaving the EU was like. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.